Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to talk about home recording and everything you need to get started. So, in order to start recording at home, you need a space to record in. Now this can be a bedroom or a basement, but it could also be a barn, a spare room, a garage, anything like that. But it also depends on what you plan on doing in that space and what your budget is. So if you're planning on maybe bringing in a bunch of clients, making it kind of like a semi-commercial studio, you want to bring in bands, single artists, whatever, you might need a larger space, like a larger basement or a larger garage or something of that nature. It also depends on the budget. So maybe you have the money to fully convert your basement into a commercial recording studio, or maybe you're just one person and you're a singer-songwriter and all you need is a small space to get started. Well, bedroom can work, or even a temporary setup can work just fine as well. But again, all depends on what you need to do in the space. Ideally, the space should be fairly acoustically sound, as in not a small square room is generally optimal. But we can also talk about acoustic treatment, which I'm going to go over later. And really any space can be made to sound at least passable, but that's another consideration when getting started. All right, so the next thing you'll need is a computer. And most people already have a computer, but if you need to get maybe a secondary computer, you don't want to use your main machine for this, I would shoot for a computer in like the $600 to $800 range if you're buying new, at least. And if you're buying used, at least get something that is new enough to run the latest OS and the latest recording software, and kind of go from there. You don't need anything crazy, but I wouldn't get a bottom of the line computer or something super cheap or something that you got for free 5 years ago. That might not be ideal and might be potentially very frustrating to make recordings on if it's super slow. Now, I use a Mac. A lot of people in the audio industry use Macs, but you don't have to do that. You can use a Windows computer too. Those work just fine. It all depends on your preference, but pick something that you're A, comfortable with, B, you can afford and budget for accordingly, and C, that is not terribly slow and is at least semi-capable to do what you need it to do. So the next thing you're going to want to do is pick out a DAW or a digital audio workstation. Now this is basically just a piece of software that runs on your computer that captures all of the audio as you're recording it and puts it into separate tracks so that you can manipulate it after the recording process. I use Logic Pro to record. I also dabble in Universal Audio's Luna a little bit. But if you're coming from a Mac, you can use GarageBand, which is a free piece of software that comes with Macs, which is what I started out on, and it's great to get started. Now, if you have a Windows PC, that's totally fine too. There are plenty of free options that you can Google and download. There's a ton of options out there, like I said. So either platform, you'll find something. And I would recommend that you probably start out with something that's maybe free or very inexpensive, because you probably don't want to dump a ton of money into this if you're just getting started. But if you do find that you're getting really into it and you want to move on, then you can build up from there. But for now, pick a free piece of software. Pretty much all of them are good. It's just a matter of preference and the interface that you prefer and the platform that you're on. Okay, so next up is an audio interface. So got one right here. This is a inexpensive Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. It's got 2 XLR inputs for microphones. It also has combi jacks, so you can plug in instruments into these as well. It also has room on the back for plugging in some speakers. It also on the front has a headphone jack, and you can control the gain and everything else from the front. This is a great little interface. It's very similar to what I started on, but this is, like I said, it's pretty much plug and play. It doesn't require any extra power, runs off of your computer. So this is a great sounding little box that will pretty much do everything that you need to do right out of the gate. So I would recommend, something like that. And there are tons and tons and tons of interfaces out there that you can upgrade to later down the road. But something like the Focusrite Scarlett line is great. They've got single channel versions, 2-channel versions like the one I showed you there. But they also have all the way up to like 8-channel versions if you're recording drums or larger bands and stuff like that. So that is kind of where I would recommend that you go. Just a simple USB bus powered interface. But there's tons of other information online, and going to a place like Sweetwater or Guitar Center, they have a million options that you can choose from, and very inexpensive, $100 to $200, depending on how many inputs you need. If you need 8 inputs, you're going to be paying a little bit more than that, but they're all very affordable and sound great out of the gate. So I would recommend that over something like a USB microphone, which those seem very convenient because you can plug them in and you're off to the races. But I would recommend this so that you can use pretty much any microphone under the sun, and that's what we're going to talk about next. All right, so picking a microphone is pretty important. I would say also depends, again, on what you're doing, but I would recommend this one, honestly. This is the Shure SM7B. This is a great microphone. It's a dynamic microphone, so it's super durable, but also great for beginners because if you don't have a treated space, meaning you don't have acoustic treatment up, it sounds maybe a little echoey, the space really impacts the recordings, especially if you're stacking a bunch of tracks on top of each other. That room sound is eventually going to seep into your recordings and may or may not sound that great. But for a microphone like this, it's fairly insensitive, meaning it doesn't capture a ton of the space around it. So a microphone like this is going to be ideal for recording in a semi-treated space or a completely untreated space. It's got an XLR connector, which will plug directly into the front of an interface like this, which is why I recommend this over something like a USB microphone, because then you're pretty much limited to just that microphone or other USB mics. So plug straight into this, but for this mic, if you get this, it is a little bit difficult to drive, as in your preamp might not have enough gain for it to get it up to a usable level to use it on a quieter source like vocals or acoustic guitar or something like that. So if you get this mic, I would recommend you get something like a cloud lifter. These things are awesome. Basically, it just runs in line with the microphone, and you turn on the phantom power on your interface, and this basically acts as a gain booster. So it will boost the signal to your microphone. Now, there are also plenty of other mics that you can get that are condenser mics, but why I really like this is this mic will work on pretty much anything. It's great on drums and percussion. It's great on an electric guitar amp. It's great on vocals. It's just great on everything. So super good all-around mic. This was actually the first serious microphone that I bought, and it's very standard. The windscreen comes off, so you can get a little bit more clarity if you want to mic a guitar amp or something like that. I've seen these used in professional studios, even on hi-hats. It really does it all. So a condenser mic also is a great choice, especially if you're doing pretty much just vocals and acoustic guitar. But keep in mind that those are much more delicate and can get a lot more expensive than dynamic mics. But I will also link some down below and recommend a bunch of really nice entry-level condenser mics too. All right, so next up, you're going to want some accessories and cables for your microphone. I would recommend obviously getting an XLR cable, which I will also link below. Kind of any standard one will work. You don't want to go, again, super cheap, but you don't have to get the most expensive one either. I would recommend maybe like a 15 to 20 foot one to start. You don't want to get a 10-foot one. That's a little limiting and short. So I would start with that. I would also start with getting something like a pop filter. especially if you're going to go with a condenser mic. So this is going to be great. Your microphone's going to sit here. You're going to sing into this or talk into this, and it's going to block all of the air that's coming out of your mouth from hitting the capsule, which is going to create a really kind of nasty, low frequency popping noise. So the pop filter, fun fact, filters out those pops. So definitely an essential thing to get if you're getting a condenser mic. I will also link one below. All right, next up is instruments. So instruments obviously depends on what you're going to play, if any, whether it's keyboard, guitar, drums, bass, whatever. I will link some inexpensive options for all of those categories down below. I happen to play guitar and bass and drums, so I have various pieces of those instruments kind of floating around the studio, because I kind of create my own tracks and I like to kind of have as many options as I can. But we live in the golden age of gear where you do not have to buy an expensive guitar or an expensive bass or drum set or whatever to get a good one. Back in the day, there wasn't very good options at the kind of entry level. But now you can get some great guitars and drums and bass and keyboards and stuff like that for quite a small amount of money. So I will link some of those as well. All right, so we're getting towards the end of the list here, but it's time to talk about acoustic treatment, which not the most exciting topic in the world, not the most glamorous or fun part of setting up a home studio, but one of the most important parts because it helps control the sound of the room, which if you're recording with a microphone, even though this mic is not super sensitive at picking up the room, it will pick up some of it, and a condenser mic much more so. So you do want to control the room. You want the room itself to sound really good so that everything that you make in that room, whether it's a drum track or a vocal track, sounds also very good. So you want to record the sound of the room as good quality as you can, and acoustic treatment will help with that. I have panels up here from Music City Acoustics. They're based out of Nashville. They hand make all their stuff. It's really high quality. I recommend checking them out, but you can also go to like GIK Acoustics. They're good as well. But I happen to use Music City Acoustics, and I've been very happy. But we can go into acoustics deeper in another video, but that is definitely something I would recommend researching and getting into, especially if you're going to be buying the item that we're going to talk about next. So the last item on this list is monitoring, more specifically studio monitors or headphones. I started out on headphones because I didn't really have a dedicated space, and headphones are actually a great option if you're using an untreated space, because the room will not have any impact on how you're hearing the audio, because the headphones obviously sit on your head, take the room out of the equation entirely. So you save a lot of money by doing that. However, I would still recommend room treatment, obviously, but I would also still recommend getting a pair of studio monitors, and you can use them in conjunction with headphones, but studio monitors are still great because they're specifically designed to be flatter, less kind of hi-fi, and a lot more revealing, so that you can make better mix decisions when you're making changes to the audio that you've recorded, adding EQ, compression, whatever. If you have, a set of speakers on here that sounds really bassy, then all of your mixes might sound very bass light, and as in they might not have much bass in them at all, because what you're doing when you're mixing is you're compensating for that. So if you're hearing a lot of low end when you're mixing, you're going to be like, wow, that's overpowering the mix. I'm going to cut a lot of that out. Probably not the best idea, because what you're doing is hearing the exaggerated bass from those speakers. So if you play those back on actual regular hi-fi speakers, it's not going to have a lot of bass because you've cut all that low end out to make them sound good on the speakers that you mixed on, not necessarily sounding good on anything else that you're listening to. So studio monitors are great, but I wouldn't really recommend getting them, honestly, until you've at least partially treated your room, because studio monitors, even the best monitors in the world, put in the worst sounding room in the world, are going to sound pretty bad, and you're not going to be able to make good mix decisions with a space like that, even if you have really, really high-end studio monitors. So just something to consider. Again, you can get some very inexpensive studio monitors that are still quite good. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of articles and videos already, but I will link a couple of those options down below. So that's about it. If you have any questions, definitely leave me a comment. Please like and subscribe. I know it's cliche, but it really does help the channel out, helps with the algorithm, and really helps me to make more videos for you. So that's all for now. I'll see you next week.